Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Even the heaven fiend Dolor felt his heart skip a beat when he heard these words. This girl was truly ferocious and dauntless. How could Ma Rulong and Xiao Xiaofeng not feel intense hatred when they heard her words? Two of their friends had just perished under Ma Xiaotao's hands, even if it hadn't been intentional. This feeling was intensified now that they were standing before the target of their vengeance, and was even further aggravated when Ma Xiaodao took the initiative to provoke them. Ma Rulong had no confidence at all if he was to battle Ma Xiaodao by himself. However, it was a different story with Xiao Xiaofeng by his side, who was a Class 5 soul engineer. He would have a much easier time dealing with Ma Xiaodao with Xiao Xiaofeng impeding and obstructing her. Xiao Xiaofeng was infuriated at Ma Xiaotao's words, and nearly pounced forward before Ma Rulong held him back. Do you guys really think you still stand a chance? You may not even be able to beat us, and so what if you do? Do you really think that those two little fellas over there can defeat Xiao Hongqian and his sister? Stop your wishful thinking, they have no way of countering Meng Hongqian's venom. Ma Xiaodao chuckled and said, "Is spouting nonsense all you know how to do? If you're trying to beat down my fighting spirit, then you're dreaming. That venom is bullshit. Why don't you ask that immature little girl if she dares to face me in battle? I'll burn her alive. Stop this nonsense and let's get this over with." She then turned and walked to the edge of the competition stage. Ma Rulong took a deep breath, as he knew that Ma Xiaodao wouldn't be easy to handle. Her temper was fiery and explosive, but her thoughts and reasoning were meticulous and thorough, to the point where he wasn't even sure what Ma Xiaotao's true strength was. He had yet to see where Ma Xiaotao's baseline lay, even up to today. Ma Rulong led Xiao Xiaofeng back to their corner, gradually distancing themselves from their opponent. This round could be said to be the ultimate showdown between the Shrek Academy and the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy's respective team leaders, and was also a clash of the highest level in the competition. Shrek Academy would have a shot at victory if she won, but if Ma Xiaodao lost, it would automatically decide the competition's result. Ma Xiaodao quickly backed off to the edge of the stage, her eyes flickering with chilly light. Nobody knew what was on her mind as her expression grew solemn. The heaven fiend Dolor glanced at both parties. The finals were about to end at long last. Even he felt a little exhausted from fully concentrating for such a long time. Despite his cultivation, let the competition begin. The ultimate showdown had finally started. Ma Xiaodao dashed forwards, while her phoenix wings swiftly emerged from her body into the air and flapped backwards. Her body barreled towards Ma Rulong and Xiao Xiaofeng like a meteor. As she did so, she opened her mouth, a phoenix fire line surging out from it and asserting long-distance pressure. Ma Rulong and Xiao Xiaofeng weren't slow either. Ma Rulong was well aware that the methods he'd employed against Jiang Peng would be useless against Ma Xiaodao. A thick, bluish-purple cannon barrel instantly appeared on his shoulder, which almost immediately fired a bluish-purple ball of light. He and Xiao Xiaofeng shared a decent chemistry, as a unidirectional soul shield was unleashed that protected them both from the Phoenix fire line attack when he did so. At the same time, he rooted himself to the ground and quickly released his soul tool fortress. Metal clanging sounds could be heard as a series of cannons appeared on his body with lightning speed. There was no doubt that he intended to use his most formidable firepower to coordinate with Ma Rulong. Relying on his food-type Soul Master's salient characteristics, his ability to continue battling was the best amongst the other Sun Moon team members. The bluish-purple lightning strike that Ma Rulong had fired from the cannon in his hands wasn't directed at Ma Xiaodao. Instead, it struck the center of the competition stage. A bluish-purple light wall was immediately erected at the exact spot it struck, barricading Ma Xiaotao's advance. According to Ma Rulong's judgment, Ma Xiaodao was fearsome and ferocious, thus she would definitely attempt to forcefully charge forward. And when she would fall into his trap. This Class 6 soul tool that Ma Rulong had just used was strong in the sense that, once Ma Xiaodao touched it, she would be stuck to it like a housefly in a spider's web. Immediately afterwards, the lightning energy contained within would envelop her entire body. When that happened, Ma Xiaodao would have to deal with the might of their attack. Although it couldn't truly harm her, it would be able to buy sufficient time for her to be subjected to their immense firepower while she was trapped. However, they didn't expect Ma Xiaodao to stop the moment the lightning screen appeared. She stopped extremely quickly, and her sixth soul ring lit up. Damn it, the Phoenix meteor shower. Ma Rulong cursed to himself, his expression changing drastically. Was Ma Xiaotao's sixth soul skill so easily resisted? That lightning trap had become her defensive barrier instead. The golden barrel that had given Team Shrek a lot of trouble appeared once again at this moment. Ma Rulong squinted his eyes as he aimed the golden barrel towards Ma Xiaodao. Whenever Ma Xiaodao unleashed the Phoenix Meteor Shower, any movement she made would greatly affect its power. Ma Rulong had Xiao Xiaofeng to defend him, thus he wouldn't suffer too much if he were struck by the Phoenix Meteor Shower a few times. On the contrary, Ma Xiaodao would be the one in deep trouble if she was struck by his attack. Ma Rulong's reaction was both quick and appropriate. However, the Phoenix Meteor Shower didn't strike when he expected it to. When the golden barrel appeared in Ma Rulong's hand, Ma Xiaodao suddenly stepped backwards and punched out with her right fist. A ball of fire was sent towards the lightning barrier in front of her. The lightning immediately engulfed the ball of fire, then blew apart. Ma Xiaodao's figure turned illusory when this happened. On closer inspection, her flaming wings were flapping rapidly behind her back. It was due to this flapping motion that she managed to rapidly change her position in the air. She even left a series of shadows behind her that shimmered as she continued to advance forward. Ma Rulong realized, to his horror, that he couldn't lock onto her exact position. What ability was she using? It was obvious that she wasn't using a soul skill, as her body wasn't shining with any soul rings. This was obviously a secret technique suitable for soul masters. Team Sun Moon was much stronger in terms of applying soul tool forts compared to other ordinary soul engineering academies. Xiao Xiaofeng's attack was holistic. There were automatic explosions, intense rays, even trapping-type soul tools involved. The entire competition stage seemed to light up with dazzling lights. It was impossible for Ma Xiaodao to dodge all of his attacks, thus she could only face them head-on. Ma Xiaodao was more powerful than Dai Yueheng, but her body wasn't as tough as his. She used her wings as her shield, and exerted all of her soul power to resist the wave after wave of Xiao Xiaofeng's relentless attack. Even though Ma Xiaodao wasn't a soul engineer, she was rather familiar with the strategies that they used. Xiao Xiaofeng's soul power was bound to be depleted extremely quickly if he kept this up, as he was only a Class 5 soul engineer, yet he was trying to suppress a soul emperor. His attacks couldn't last long at this rate. Xiao Xiaofeng would become less and less useful to Ma Rulong as his intensity dipped. Ma Xiaodao was the calmest at the most critical moments. She carefully observed Ma Rulong's actions while she was resisting Xiao Xiaofeng's attacks. Xiao Xiaofeng was, without a doubt, aiding Ma Rulong. Ma Rulong's attacks were much more threatening towards Ma Xiaodao because of this. Ma Rulong suddenly grabbed the golden sword's hilt with both of his hands and slowly lifted it, intense golden light shining from the sword's body as he did so. 9 core formations could be seen extending from the sword tip down to the hilt. Streaks and streaks of light shot into the air as the intense golden light shone. Ma Rulong lifted the sword far above his head, his pupils slowly starting to turn golden. Awaken, Judgment Sword. Ma Rulong shouted, injecting his soul power into the huge sword at a frightening speed. A white halo could be seen rising from his feet because he was injecting his soul power into the sword so intensely. As the halo moved round his entire body, it eventually reached his hands, then entered the sword. The sword also started to experience changes. The golden light on the hilt retracted, while the sword gradually turned 2 different colors. One side of the sword turned white, while the other side turned black. The 2 contrasting colors exuded an odd sense amidst the golden light that flashed, stained as darkness, guilty of heresy. Ma Rulong grabbed the huge sword with both his hands, then pointed the black side of the blade in Ma Xiaodao's direction. A streak of black radiance flashed through the air, then suddenly disappeared. Ma Xiaodao's entire body raged with flames. However, when the black radiance reached her, all of her defenses failed. The black radiance simply flashed as it entered her body. Ma Xiaodao immediately felt her body turning abnormal. Her crimson-red phoenix flames instantly turned black and dark, and chilly scents filled her entire body. The evil energy that had been suppressed immediately rampaged through her body and combined with the black phoenix flames. She was about to lose control. What soul tool is this? Ma Xiaodao was appalled. It was her first time experiencing something as strange as this. This soul tool attack couldn't be defended against. It was also at this point that Ma Rulong flipped the huge sword over. The white side then emitted an intense white color and shone with an extremely bright white radiance. The surging aura of light instantly filled the entire venue. Ma Xiaodao groaned in pain as the black phoenix flames on her body turned into a haze. She felt as if she was going to be decomposed by the light. The phoenix flames in her body started to flood out of her. Ma Rulong appeared very pleased. The scheme that he'd plotted had finally succeeded. He'd once mentioned in his competition against Jiang Peng that a soul engineer was the most familiar with his own self. That was why all of his soul tools were self-developed. He hadn't said it for Jiang Peng, however. He'd said it for Shrek Academy. In reality, the Judgment Sword couldn't have been created by him, as it was a Class 8 close combat soul tool. In fact, it was one of the best Class 8 soul tools. Ma Xiaodao couldn't control her flames anymore, even if she wanted to. The intense aura of light suppressed her from the outside, causing the dark flames on her body to be extinguished, whereas the evil phoenix fire continued to ravage her body now that it had been combined with the power of darkness. Ma Xiaodao's body was on the brink of collapse. The evil aura had become a part of darkness. The Judgment Sword's effect on her was even greater compared than it would be to an ordinary soul master. Her eyes that had originally flashed with flames had instantly turned pitch black. Was this the end? Was she going to lose? Was Shrek Academy going to lose? Shrek's glory was at stake here. Ma Xiaodao became filled with fury. She was extremely indignant. Jiang Nannan, Xu Sanxia, Bei Bei, and Ling Luochen had all been defeated. Even Dai Yueheng had lost his combat abilities due to fighting against their opponent's poison-type soul master. They'd given their all in order to contribute to the eventual victory of Shrek. They'd even put their lives on the line for Shrek's glory. But as their team leader, was Ma Xiaodao going to collapse just like this? Judgment? What bullshit judgment? I'm not convinced. I don't believe that there's anything that can judge me in this world. Ma Xiaodao's desire to survive, coupled with her strong resentment, was revealed. As the inheriting disciple of Shrek Academy's dean, Ma Xiaodao was one of the best in terms of abilities, talent, and competitiveness among all the inner courtyard disciples. Nobody her age could rival her. She was Shrek Academy's future hope. With her talent, she could have gone even further and become the first in Shrek Academy's history to become a soul sage before she was 21. However, she'd regretfully been delayed because she had to repress the evil fire within her. Thus, this was never fulfilled. All of this repression disappeared at this moment. Her martial soul began to show signs of changing due to the purification at this instant under the effect of her resilience. The phoenix was the king of all birds. Even only the strongest and most powerful dragon could be mentioned in the same breath as a phoenix among phoenixes. Fire phoenixes had the purest bloodline. However, they weren't the only ones with an extremely pure bloodline. Ma Xiaodao had a part of the fire phoenix's bloodline in her body. However, this bloodline wasn't pure. She'd never be a true fire phoenix because of the evil aura that also existed in her body. But the bloodline in her body suddenly changed. It became that of a dark phoenix, filled with desolation and violence. This phoenix's sole purpose was to destroy and wreak havoc. This was the evil side of the fire phoenix, the dark phoenix. It had appeared in the world for the first time as a martial soul. A clear and crisp phoenix whistle resonated from Ma Xiaodao's mouth. At the same time, a huge, golden light blade had just taken form on the Judgment Sword. It then slashed towards her. The black flames were quickly extinguished as they met the golden light blade. The competition was also bound to end when the sword slashed down. The Heaven Fiend Dolor would definitely stop the sword from striking Ma Xiaodao. But the black flames on Ma Xiaodao's body that had quickly turned to haze began to gather and compress inside of her. Following that, a huge projection appeared behind her back. An entirely black phoenix that was much smaller than the original evil phoenix appeared. However, a frightening aura was exuded from its pitch-black body, and its deep, purple eyes were filled with an aura of desolation and insanity. This isn't good. Xiaodao has changed. Elder Xian suddenly stood up. His eyes revealed a look of anxiety. Even with his experience, he couldn't determine whether this change that Ma Xiaodao was experiencing was good or bad. Ma Xiaodao screamed. When she opened her eyes, a purplish light flashed, and a frightening aura emerged alongside her black flames. A streak of crystallic yellow light instantly emerged and turned into a huge blade of light alongside her maniacal, tiger's roar. It struck the side of the Judgment Sword heavily, and a loud boom resonated. Ma Rulong's Judgment Sword was stopped in place, while Ma Xiaodao held another huge blade in her hand. This was what had been concealed within the ring that Dai Yueheng gave to her. It was the tyrannical Tiger Soul Blade, the Class 8 offensive close combat soul tool that they'd obtained from the top-ranked auction. This soul blade was 4.5 feet long, and I was at least 1 inch thick. It was curved like a cavalry saber, while its hilt was made of bone, and its pommel was extremely wide. Overall, it was shaped like a tiger's head. This soul blade wasn't comparable to the Judgment Sword in terms of quality, and to unleash its full might, one needed to be a soul sage at the very least. However, Ma Xiaodao had understood Dai Yuehang's intention when she'd received the ring. She also believed that she'd be able to at least land a few strikes with this soul blade if she utilized her phoenix flames. But she hadn't expected to use this soul blade under such circumstances. Now that she turned into the Dark Phoenix, she could sense that everything was different. A boundless aura of brutality and violence raged from her heart, while a frightening aura was instantly unleashed. The tyrannical tiger soul blade's 7-ring restriction couldn't even stop her from using it. As she held the soul blade, black flames instantly entered it. Ma Xiaodao screamed once again, and the black phoenix behind her slowly drifted in front of her, then fused with the soul blade. As she held onto the soul blade's hilt with both hands, her delicate figure made a half-turn in the air. She then swung the soul blade again. Ma Rulong couldn't resist her anymore this time. His cultivation was not only beneath hers, but he'd also used the judgment sword against his abilities. The soul blade strike that was previously unleashed against him nearly crippled his ability to wield the judgment sword further. When Ma Xiaodao struck again, the judgment sword flew out of his hand. The huge soul blade landed on his body with a tiger's roar, and a black light flashed. The invincible barrier lit up in time. However, something extremely shocking appeared. The invincible barrier was torn apart within the first second, even though it was supposed to last for 3 seconds. Ma Rulong's body flew backwards and heavily struck the defensive barrier around the competition stage. Ma Xiaodao then swung the tyrannical tiger soul blade towards Xiao Xiaofeng. Xiao Xiaofeng continued to persistently attack Ma Xiaodao after she transformed. However, he was absolutely horrified when he discovered that almost all of his Class 5 soul tools had lost their effect. The attacks unleashed by his soul tool fort were ablated by Ma Xiaodao's black flames, with no traces left behind. Ma Rulong and Xiao Xiaofeng's plan was that Xiao Xiaofeng would try to restrain Ma Xiaodao while Ma Rulong would unleash the judgment sword. Boom! Black flames scattered and instantly covered the entire region. When the black flames landed on the ground also started to combust and turned into a sea of fire. The regions that were on fire then began to melt and even began to collapse. Ma Xiaodao's flashing, purple gaze was fixated on Xiao Xiaofeng. As she held the blade with both her hands, spots of purplish radiance seemed to spread from her eyes. A frightening aura was released from her body, and she slashed out with her soul blade again amidst a terrifying roar. "Stop, the match has ended." Huang Jinshu's frantic voice sounded. Ma Xiaodao's tyrannical tiger soul blade stopped mid-strike and didn't slash down. The black flames around Ma Xiaodao weakened a little, and she slowly lowered the huge soul blade. A purplish radiance flashed through her eyes, but she remained steadfast. Huang Jinshu seemed a little pathetic even though he was a titled Dolor. He quickly led Xiao Xiaofeng, covered in a globe of starlight, to Ma Rulong. The shield from earlier had already disappeared, and many holes had appeared in his long robe. Even a small segment of his hair seemed to have been charred away. When Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen walked up to the competition stage, their minds were still preoccupied by Ma Rulong and Xiao Xiaofeng's lost looks. In the previous round, Ma Xiaodao had still managed to defeat them even though she was outnumbered and had to face the frightening attacks of the Class 8 Judgment Sword. Ma Xiaodao didn't just achieve victory. She even dented their confidence. This was especially so for Ma Rulong. Although he was not heavily hurt, he was tormented internally. As their team leader, he still lost even though he had used such a powerful soul tool, combusted his own life power and had a numerical advantage over Ma Xiaodao. The overdepletion of his soul power meant that his powers would not just stagnate for a year. What was even more frightening was that Ma Xiaodao's black flames had left a trauma in his heart that couldn't be obliterated. Both he and Xiao Xiaofeng had been trounced in their fight. However, Shrek wasn't in good shape either. They no longer had any alternatives. However, they could become the eventual champions of the tournament if they managed to achieve victory in this upcoming 2v2 battle. Younger sister, I must admit that my past opinion about Shrek Academy was wrong. Shrek is really powerful. Xiao Hongchen did not look arrogant anymore. He was still a little pale from the injury he had received. But there was a sense of resilience amidst that paleness that had never been there before. Meng Hongchen sighed. If all their official team members were here, we'd not even stand a chance. Xiao Hongchen looked into the sky. The rain was getting heavier, and there was even a layer of mist in the air. Their clothing was also wet, but didn't become drenched. As their soul power evaporated some of the rain, I must stabilize myself after this tournament. Grandpa was right. It's not a good thing to increase our cultivation so quickly. It's not just because our bodies can't handle the burden. It's more because of our psychological mindset. If I don't stabilize myself, I'm afraid that I'll continue to be unable to reach my peak. More than a month had already passed. After all the hard-fought battles and effort they had made, they had finally reached this stage. This was especially so for everyone on Shrek's team. It wasn't easy for them to be standing here in the final. The burning competitive streak in Hui Yuhao's eyes dipped a little. In his eyes, a dim golden light subtly appeared. Although he wore an obvious look of innocence, there was also a shocking calmness about him too. Wang Dong and Hui Yuhao were different. A light seemed to shine from Wang Dong's body. That pure feeling of light seemed to cause his body to burn up. No matter how gloomy it was or how the raindrops kept on falling, everything around seemed to turn clear as he stood there. Xiao Hongchen was a 5-ringed soul king. His martial soul was a 3-legged golden toad, and he was a class 5 soul engineer. Meng Hongchen was a 5-ringed soul king too. Her martial soul was a vermilion clear ice toad, and she was also a class 5 soul engineer. Hui Yuhao had 2 soul rings. His martial souls were the Spirit Eyes and Ice Jade Empress. He was a class 2 soul engineer. Wang Dong had 3 soul rings. His martial souls were the Radiant Butterfly Goddess and the Clear Sky Hammer. The difference in cultivation between both sides was very obvious. But no one thought that the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy would definitely emerge victorious. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong had created a lot of miracles in this tournament. Moreover, Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen were both hurt now, and their soul power had been depleted greatly too. Their soul power could be replenished by soul tools like the milk bottle, but what about their vigor? What about their injuries? Their powers waxed and waned, making the gap in their powers less obvious than the gap in their ranks. Both sides, please step back. The Heaven Fiend Doluo shouted. This was likely to be the last match that he would referee. Huang Jinshu swore to himself secretly that he wouldn't serve as a referee if there was a next time. No one was more shocked than him right now. As the referee, he could truly sense the power of these youths. He saw many things on them that he shouldn't have seen on youths. Top-ranked martial souls, twin martial souls, and even Class 8 soul tools. The transformation of Ma Xiaotao's martial soul earlier left him the most appalled. His Heaven Fiend Lone Star was even unable to entirely resist Ma Xiaotao's black flames. What was it exactly? Were these youths really not even 20 yet? Especially these 2 representing Shrek Academy now. They were probably not even 15 years old yet, much less 20 years old. However, the expression in their eyes told Huang Jinshu that they were confident they would win. The Heaven Fiend Doluo was even in a slight trance now. That's because he recalled when he was only 15. He was trying his best to cultivate then, and his family hadn't been killed by his Heaven Fiend Lone Star's curse yet. But he didn't even know much about the world of soul masters then. He couldn't imagine how far these youths could go 20 and even 30 years from now. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong held each other's hands as they stepped back. They knew that this was probably the toughest and the most intense battle that they were going to fight ever since they had entered Shrek Academy. It was no longer just a tournament. It was war. It was a war where their lives were at stake. But the more it was like that, the more excited they felt. Their potential seemed to be completely stimulated now. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong were the kind of talented youths that resembled sponges that had fully absorbed water. The greater the pressure, the greater the potential they showed. Before the competition even began, their energies had reached their peaks already. As they held each other's hands, their minds were connected. Hui Yuhao's figure flashed and he moved behind Wang Dong after they retreated to the edge of the competition stage. He placed his hands on Wang Dong's waist, while Wang Dong was calm as he looked opposite him. This was already starkly different from what they had displayed in this tournament before. In the previous rounds, Hui Yuhao took the lead when they unleashed their martial soul fusion skill. Everyone believed that Wang Dong was only his aide. Besides unleashing their martial soul fusion skill together, Wang Dong didn't really stand out. The only surprise that he gave was probably when he unleashed his clear sky hammer. But that was the only time. There were very few who remembered Wang Dong. But no one would forget Hui Yuhao's 600,000-year soul rings at the start of the tournament. Although everyone found out that it was fake, the shock that they felt was still deeply imprinted in their minds. Hui Yuhao was actually standing behind Wang Dong right now. It was obvious that Wang Dong was going to lead this time. No one expected this, even their opponents. After seeing Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong's movements, Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen's expressions changed slightly. They discovered that they knew very little about Wang Dong. To everyone, Wang Dong and Hui Yuhao came as a single entity. They fought together from the start. But what were his abilities? What was his martial soul? Many were already starting to think about this question. Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen retreated to the edge of the competition stage 2. Meng Hongchen stood in front, while Xiao Hongchen took up the rear. But neither of them made any contact with each other. Xiao Hongchen was not physically well yet. His physical body was completely ravaged by Dai Yuehan, and he didn't even dare to use the milk bottle to restore his soul power. That was because his passageways couldn't handle it. His dislocated bones were already set, and his injuries were already healing too. But he still felt tremendous pain throughout his body at times. He was not even up to 30% of his peak condition. That was why he could only aid his younger sister. Meng Hongchen was the one leading now. Meng Hongchen's Class 6 Soul Tool armor saved her at the last moment when she fought Dai Yuehan. But she was still hurt to some degree. Even so, she still managed to maintain more than 70% of her abilities. More importantly, she was confident in her Vermilion Ice Toad's lethal poison. Dai Yuehan could delay the spread of the poison with his Soul Emperor cultivation, but what about these two? What cultivation did they have? The tournament would likely end if they were even slightly touched by the Vermilion Ice Toad's poison. The only thing that Meng Hongchen couldn't figure out was why the two of them had such tenacious looks in their eyes. Did they still think that they had a chance in this tournament? They were Shrek's last standing members, and they had no choice but to compete. Meng Hongchen revealed a cold look on her face. Though she was attracted to Wang Dong, this was a competition that involved the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy's glory. This tournament might even concern the Sun Moon Empire's glory. She couldn't lose. The pride in her heart had never been inferior to her brothers. The Heaven Fiend Doluo took in a deep breath. After that, he lifted his right hand up before it jolted downwards. Match, start! As he shouted, everyone opened their eyes wide. Their pupils even shrank. Everyone's attention was drawn to the competition stage. On the city wall, the Star Luo Emperor and the White Tiger Duke didn't really converse either. Their palms were pressed on the crenellations, and they were watching the match anxiously. The White Tiger squinted his eyes, and they glowed with light. When he saw Hui Yuhao, he had a weird feeling. He couldn't tell what it was exactly, but Hui Yuhao naturally drew his attention. Could this young fellow create a miracle? Both parties unleashed their martial souls as the competition began. Meng Hongchen lifted her arms, and two streaks of icy blue light instantly appeared. Her armor was damaged. But her Class 6 swords were still intact. Her defense might have been weakened without the impregnable wall and armor, but her offensive ability wasn't much affected. Xiao Hongchen took in a deep breath behind Meng Hongchen and repressed the pain in his body. He also unleashed his three-legged golden toad. Golden, metal foam spilled out, and barrels started to appear on his body. Meng Hongchen had a sudden feeling that only such a dazzling martial soul was worthy of him. Wang Dong's figure started to rise as his wings flapped open. As they started to flap, he leapt in Meng Hongchen and Xiao Hongchen's direction. Hui Yuhao was tightly stuck to Wang Dong's back, and his hands were around his waist. The two of them seemed like the same person now. But Meng Hongchen and Xiao Hongchen couldn't see Hui Yuhao's arms around Wang Dong's waist, as Hui Yuhao's imitation started to take effect. Wang Dong's speed was naturally inferior to Ma Xiaotao's, but he was not slow. As he flapped his wings, he emitted a dazzling and blinding golden blue radiance which enabled him to quicken his speed through the air. Hui Yuhao had also unleashed his Soul Tool thruster behind him. Although it was only a Class 2 thruster, it still allowed Wang Dong's speed to increase by at least 30%. Xiao Hongchen's attack began. Streaks of light shot out, and they started to engulf Wang Dong's body. Since he was a soul engineer, using a long-range soul tool to lock onto his target was very basic. Even though he was critically injured, he was confident that he could strike his opponent. Soul Tool rays and Soul Tool cannon shells engulfed Wang Dong as if they were windstorms. There were even Soul Tools among them that could lock onto their opponents. However, the two of them fell into a slight trance just as they were about to attack. Xiao Hongchen's attack had already been unleashed, but its lock-on effect didn't work. What was going on? Xiao Hongchen was shocked. But he had unleashed several of his long-range soul tools at the same time. His all-round attack had already been launched. Xiao Hongchen believed that it would be very difficult for Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong to resist his wave of attacks with their abilities. He used Class 5 soul tools that even Soul Kings had to be careful of. Moreover, his attack was so condensed. Even if they used the Golden Road, what kind of effect could it produce? That martial fusion soul skill of theirs was a control-type skill, meaning that it was unlikely to strike both Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen. Even if they were struck, nothing would happen. There was no way that Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong could get close to them. Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen had the same thoughts. But their eyes soon opened wide. That was because they discovered that they were wrong. Against the attacks of Class 5 soul tools, one could dodge instead of resisting them. Wang Dong's wings retracted before he made a breathtaking escape. His pair of wings seemed to have a life of their own. They flapped open before retracting, flapping and drifting. Every transformation adjusted his flying posture slightly. The streaks of Soul Tool rays and Soul Tool cannon shells slid past him because they couldn't lock onto him. Wang Dong was like a radiant butterfly goddess that was facing a huge web. No matter how all-engulfing that web was, he could find a loophole to escape. His glittery dodges even left streaks of dazzling shadows in mid-air. Bright, golden-blue flowing light caused the spectators to erupt in cheers. Everyone sympathized with the underdogs. The spectators' emotions reached their height as they witnessed Wang Dong's impeccable dodges. They were even praying for Shrek Academy. It didn't matter whether they had wagered on the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. As the saying goes, the insider knows the ropes, while the outsider just comes along for the ride. The spectators were extremely excited as they watched the competition, but the true Soul Masters were also wide-eyed right now. Including the Star Luo Emperor and White Tiger Duke, those who were observing carefully or Soul Masters with great visual powers could tell that Hui Yuhao's Soul Tool thruster had developed slight changes as Wang Dong was dodging Xiao Hongchen's attack. This meant that his Soul Tool thruster had launched, but not with great intensity. But it was these gentle propulsions that enabled Wang Dong to dodge successfully time and time again. The cooperation between the two of them couldn't just be described using great chemistry, they were almost like the same person. However, they would vomit out blood if they knew what Hui Yuhao was thinking. Without a doubt, Xiao Hongchen had lost his ability to lock onto Wang Dong because of his spiritual interference. Wang Dong turned to his left at this instant and managed to slide in between the two streaks of light. But Meng Hongchen's attack wasn't so easily avoided. The light blades struck each other behind Wang Dong and unleashed a layer of icy fog. The Vermilion Ice Toad's lethal poison had finally appeared in this critical last match of the tournament. Below the stage, Elder Xian, Wang Yang, Yikai Tu, and Xiao Xiao were all extremely anxious. The key lay in whether Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong could resist this lethal poison. The icy fog covered a huge area. Wang Dong and Hui Yuhao were immediately engulfed, but Wang Dong didn't seem to realize the lethal poison that was coming from his back. His wings revealed a golden light pattern before his second soul ring flashed brightly. A huge number of golden balls of light suddenly appeared. They started to bombard Xiao Hongchen, who had also just unleashed his second wave of attacks. The Radiant Butterfly Goddess' second soul skill, the Light of the Butterfly Goddess. An intense aura of light filled the entire venue. This was everyone's first time seeing the might of Wang Dong's soul skill. With Hui Yuhao's imitation covering them, the soul rings that both Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong unleashed were white. No one could see exactly what class their soul skills were in. But the power of their soul skills wouldn't change because of this. Wang Dong quickly told Xiao Hongchen with his abilities that underestimating him was a big mistake. An explosive boom reverberated within a 20-meter radius. Logically speaking, Wang Dong's Light of the Butterfly Goddess shouldn't have been able to resist the Soul Tool rays even if they could resist the Soul Tool cannons. But Xiao Hongchen's attack was perfectly intercepted. The explosion only occurred between the two of them. A few of the balls formed by Wang Dong's Light of the Butterfly Goddess landed even in front of Xiao Hongchen and forced him to resist using his impregnable wall. Only a Soul Ancestor's strongest soul skill would have such an effect. Xiao Hongchen cursed in his heart. His cultivation was indeed not up to standard yet, such that the power of his soul tools couldn't be fully unleashed. He was suppressed by Wang Dong's second soul skill, and felt extremely depressed by that. Wang Dong had 3 rings. With the aid of Hui Yuhao's twin martial soul that was close to a 3-ringed cultivation, the combination of their soul powers reached above rank 40. Hui Yuhao's soul power might only be at rank 28, but the sum of his soul power was not any less than Wang Dong. That was because his second martial soul might have a soul ring. Although most of the power of the 100,000-year soul ring was sealed, his total soul power still managed to increase some. The Haodong power didn't function based on the laws of addition. Wang Dong's Light of the Butterfly Goddess was also a 1,000-year soul skill. Under such a circumstance, their combined strike was already comparable to a top-ranked soul ancestor. They were as powerful as Bei Bei and Xu Sancha with their unchanged martial souls, and that was without consideration for their martial fusion soul skills. Meng Hongchen was slightly shocked as she saw Wang Dong showing his might. She quickly adjusted her mentality and burst forward rapidly. Her thin swords turned into a sky full of light projections that slashed down towards Wang Dong. It was a pity that her armor was damaged, otherwise she would have flown into the air to fight Wang Dong. Meng Hongchen had a question in her mind right now. Why hadn't the Vermilion Ice Toad's poison taken effect yet? The Vermilion Ice Toad's poison did engulf Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong. But it was a pity that her poison was useless against them. Why was this? Only Hui Yuhao understood why. This could only be traced back to the time when Hui Yuhao caught hold of Bei Bei after he was defeated by the Ice Toad's poison. Oh? How could this be? Such a soul beast still exists. Ice Empress, what's going on? What's wrong with my eldest senior? Then what do we do? Ice Empress, can you neutralize this poison? I can't. That's because your partner cannot bear the ultimate ice's encroachment. He can only dispel the poison through the extreme chill in his own body. There's no other way. If that method is used, only an ice-type body can handle the burden. Otherwise, one's internal organs will be frozen. Will I be poisoned? Are you joking? As one of the 3 heavenly kings of the extreme north, I am the king of all ice-type soul beasts. Although the Vermilion Ice Toad is a rather strong soul beast, there's a reason why it doesn't dare to enter the extreme north region. That's because the Ice Jade Scorpions are its jinx. While we gave up lethal poison to achieve the ultimate ice, we can't be hurt by any ice-type poison. You don't have to be afraid of her poison when you face her. No ice-type or fire-type poison can work against the ultimate ice. If Hui Yuhao had to appraise which soul skill of his was the most powerful, it had to be one of the 4 soul skills that the Ice Empress conferred onto him. In terms of both offense and defense, the Ice Empress lived up to its name as one of the 3 heavenly kings of the extreme north. But if he had to choose the most practical soul skill, which one would he choose? If someone really understood his capabilities, he might think it was the spiritual detection. But Hui Yuhao would certainly choose the Spirit Eye's second soul skill. Imitation. Imitation was a 1,000-year soul skill bestowed onto him by the clan members that the Skydream Ice Worm helped him to find. Among all of Hui Yuhao's soul skills, imitation was the least offensively inclined. But it was the most important soul skill to him, even far more important than his spiritual detection. Although imitation was a 1,000-year soul skill, it depleted Hui Yuhao's soul power the least when it was unleashed due to its special characteristic. Hui Yuhao could sustain it for a very long time, and he wouldn't even be discovered by his opponent, unless his opponent's spiritual power was beyond his, and they could use a special spiritual detection power to see through him. The only pity was that imitation could only be used within a 3-meter radius with Hui Yuhao as the center. Otherwise, this soul skill would have been unbelievably powerful. Hui Yuhao was using imitation at this exact moment. Not only did his imitation prevent his opponent from seeing him, but it also prevented his opponent from seeing what he was doing. Even the spectators couldn't see. When imitation was used, Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong were actually masked by a layer of transparent armor that seemed to be made up of diamond-like particles. Their entire bodies were covered. It was the Ice Empress barrier, Hui Yuhao's strongest defense-type soul skill. It was one of the 2 soul skills bestowed onto him by the 400,000-year Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion soul ring. The ultimate ice's defensive strength reached its peak under the Ice Empress barrier. How could the Vermilion Ice Toad's poison overcome it? A dim radiance flashed. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong seemed to be the same entity now. In fact, Hui Yuhao depleted more of his soul power than Wang Dong, who was attacking more actively. Spiritual detection sharing, spiritual interference and the Ice Empress barrier. These soul skills were unleashed with all of Hui Yuhao's might. This was a soul skill that Wang Dong used very, very rarely. However, its strength was absolutely not as ordinary as that of a normal 1,000-year soul skill. Wang Dong's second soul ring was already a 1,000-year one, and his third one had actually surpassed 3,000 years of age. In other words, his third soul skill was practically equivalent to Meng Hongchen's fourth one. Although his attack couldn't take on a Soul King, the explosive power generated by the Butterfly Goddess Slash that was strengthened by the Haodong power was extremely great. It clearly wasn't possible for him to use this soul skill to defeat Meng Hongchen, but it was enough for him to merely stall for time. The waves of light blades instantaneously detonated, making the hundreds of golden light blades resemble the bloom of a rosebud. Then, it once again exploded into countless flower petals. The instant the tightly packed blades of light detonated, they carried the aura of the sun and flew around in all directions. Meng Hongchen was flustered as she faced Wang Dong's attack. After all, she had lost her powerful defensive armor, which meant that she would be injured if the blades of light struck her. If she were in her peak condition and fully equipped with her soul tools, she would have even dared to charge through an attack like this without feeling any pressure. However, this was clearly impossible now. This was the final battle, and victory in this match would determine whether or not they would be able to bring the champion's trophy back. How could she dare to be careless at all? Furthermore, she subconsciously felt that Wang Dong was very strong. Perhaps these were her inner feelings wreaking havoc on her, or just the feelings of a young girl. Because of that, Meng Hongchen instantly danced about with her swords the instant she collided with the butterfly goddess Slash, creating an airtight barrier that blocked all of Wang Dong's attacks. Whenever her thin swords collided with a blade of light, they would release a large amount of the vermilion clear ice toad's poison. As long as her poison took effect, this battle would be over. Meng Hongchen and Xiao Hongchen had watched over Hui Yuhao's previous matches, but their line of sight had been blocked by the protective barrier surrounding the tournament stage. As such, they were only able to see Hui Yuhao's 100,000-year soul ring and the imposing aura that it gave off. They hadn't sensed its true aura. The facts had shown that what Hui Yuhao had done was merely an illusion. After that battle, Hui Yuhao hadn't used an ability like that in any of his other battles. Although the other teams wouldn't go so far as to completely ignore his soul skill, a large majority of them reckoned that he had been seen through, which meant that there was no longer any practical meaning to it anymore. However, as Meng Hongchen faced the aura that belonged to the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion, she immediately realized how much of a joke her judgment had been. The terrifying aura of the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion was just so realistic, and even if they were trapped in an illusory domain, this was one that was infinitely close to reality. Her martial soul was fully suppressed in front of this terrifying aura, to the extent where she wasn't even able to release a half of her true cultivation. This was even compounded with the sensation of terror that came from the very depths of her heart, causing a tremendous impact to her will to fight. It was no wonder that so many people had suffered disastrous defeats when facing the 100,000-year soul ring that Hui Yuhao had released. The deterrent it gave off was just that powerful. Meng Hongchen wasn't the only person affected by the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion's aura. Even Xiao Hongchen was similarly affected by it. The vermilion clear ice toad and the three-legged golden toad were both toad-type martial souls. Out of the 5 poisons, the poison that came from a toad and the poison that came from a scorpion were equally matched. There wasn't too much of a difference between both parties, and thus victory and defeat would be decided by the levels of the two creatures. There was no doubt that the three-legged golden toad was of a higher level than the vermilion clear ice toad, and the two were also top-ranked martial souls. However, they were akin to subjects who were facing their king whilst facing the unrivaled martial soul, the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion. Regardless of how strong they were still petty and weak in front of a true king. They were completely unable to imagine how a mere illusory domain could cause such a great effect. However, was what Hui Yuhao was releasing now still a mere illusory domain? This was a true display of the power of ultimate ice, and also its tyrannical might. Even the vermilion clear ice toad that was also an ice-type martial soul wasn't able to endure it. Although Hui Yuhao couldn't truly use the might of this domain-type soul skill, he was still able to unleash a portion of the Ice Empress power in a limited range. Meng Hongchen reached the top point of her jump as her body was instantly frozen in the domain of perpetual ice, causing her to immediately plummet to the ground. How could Wang Dong just give up on a good opportunity like this? Folding his wings, he instantly chased after Meng Hongchen and activated his guillotine wing. However, Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong didn't notice that a dark red chain had somehow been connected to Meng Hongchen's waist. The instant Wang Dong's attack was about to land, Meng Hongchen was instantly pulled away, bringing her out of Wang Dong's attack range. Right after that, a large energy storm flew straight towards him, blocking his pursuit. The dark red chain had appeared in Xiao Hongchen's hand first, and his current expression was that of solemnity. Right. As they walked onto the tournament stage, neither he or Meng Hongchen had thought that this battle had any meaning. However, he now felt that he had been wrong. As he faced these two youths, he realized that he couldn't use their level of soul power to judge them. Wang Dong and Hui Yuhao were extremely well coordinated, but Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen were siblings. The two had grown up together and had worked, fought, and cultivated together. The level of synergy they possessed wasn't any inferior to Hui Yuhao's duo. At this moment, a dark red light lit up by Meng Hongchen's chest. Right after that, an icy mist shot out from her body with a flash of red light. Then, it quickly returned and entered her body once again, allowing her to unexpectedly recover from the domain of perpetual ice. Although her body was still trembling, and she didn't seem to be able to hold her swords properly, she had regained the ability to move. Hui Yuhao had used the domain of perpetual ice many times in the past, and he had even used it against Soul Kings before. However, this was the first time he met someone who was able to bypass it so quickly. Other than the difference in their cultivations, the profundity contained within the vermilion clear ice toad's fusion of ice and fire had played an important role in this. Hui Yuhao was quickly thinking to himself, it's no wonder the vermilion clear ice toad didn't get decisively sealed in front of my ultimate ice A. If I were also a Soul King, how would she be able to break through my domain of perpetual ice so easily? At this moment, both parties seemed to return to their original positions. Under Xiao Hongchen's all-out attacks, Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong weren't able to complete their pursuit. The might of the Ice Jade Emperor's Scorpion then vanished like a flash in the dark. Unfurling his wings, Wang Dong once again revealed his powerful evasion skills in midair. Guided by the spiritual detection, over 90% of the soul tool attacks targeting him would miss completely. However, Wang Dong's figure was gradually approaching the Hongchen siblings. When two Soul Kings used a fusion skill together, how powerful would their attack be? They were clearly trying to take Hui Yuhao's duo out in one shot. Let's take them on. Wang Dong let out a shout. Because he was overly excited, there seemed to be a few traces of delicateness contained in his voice. Hui Yuhao took a deep breath. He could no longer hesitate at this moment. Otherwise, their last chance of winning would disappear. Immediately dispelling the Ice Empress armor, Hui Yuhao hugged Wang Dong. At the same time, the aura of the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion returned to his body, leaving only his spirit eyes. Wang Dong's wings quietly vanished, causing the dazzling bluish-golden light in the sky to disappear. Wang Dong hugged Hui Yuhao from the back, then descended to the tournament stage. At this moment, however, a pitch-black hammer appeared in his hand. This was his second martial soul, the Clear Sky Hammer. They were about to fall to the ground, but at this moment, Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong's bodies released a dazzling light. This was an indescribable light of nothingness that caused everything contained within it to vanish from sight. The only thing left was an illusory figure. This illusory figure looked somewhat strange, and its entire body was transparent. Its face couldn't be clearly seen, but its hands formed the shape of a heart. The figure looked like an adult male, and if anyone had seen the initial display of Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong's Heavenly Emperor's hammer, they would have discovered that this void-like figure was identical to that of the aforementioned skill. However, the Heavenly Emperor's hammer was formed by the fusion between the Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion and the Clear Sky Hammer. On the other hand, Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong weren't using the golden road that was formed by the Radiant Butterfly Goddess and the Spirit Eyes, nor the Heavenly Emperor's hammer. Instead, they were using the mysterious fusion between the Spirit Eyes and the Clear Sky Hammer. Everything passed by quickly as both parties unexpectedly released their respective fusion skills together. This was the first time that this had happened in this year's Continental Advanced Academy Soul Dueling Tournament. The audience felt as though their hearts were about to jump out from their throats. A scene like this would be rarely seen even in 100 years. How many Soul Masters in this world could possess a fusion skill? The fact that two pairs of them had appeared at this moment was simply too shocking. Even Elder Xian from Shrek Academy was already clenching his fists tightly. Were it not for the fact that he was distracted by suppressing the black flames of the Dark Phoenix, he would have had an even more excited expression. It was at this moment that the audience finally took notice of them. There was no need to even mention how much of a miserable state the two siblings were in. Disregarding Xiao Hongchen, even Meng Hongchen's mouth and nose were covered in bloodstains. They seemed to have come to their senses at this moment, but they couldn't do anything other than reveal the shock in their eyes. Xiao Hongchen suddenly let out a muffled groan, and he directly fell to the floor. However, his eyes were actually filled with infatuation the moment before he collapsed. However, Meng Hongchen's eyes were only filled with shock. She couldn't believe that the city-overthrowing beauty that made even her look inferior was created by a fusion skill. The peerless beauty descended from the sky and swiftly landed in front of the duo, chilly intent radiating from her golden eyes as she did so. At this moment, Meng Hongchen was finally able to clearly see the characters on the peerless beauty's forehead. This character was clearly a trident, and it was very small, seemingly only an inch wide. Moreover, it quietly faded as the peerless beauty landed. However, it left behind a noble sense of awe on her forehead, though it had only existed for a brief moment. Goodbye. The young lady's red lips rose gently. With a gentle sweep of her wings, a three-colored halo of light immediately covered Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen's bodies. However, it didn't seem to hurt them, it only sent their bodies off the tournament stage. Meng Hongchen didn't try to resist it. Due to Xiao Hongchen's heavy injuries, Hongchen's yearning had been unleashed using her own soul power only. Furthermore, after it was forcefully interrupted by Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong's spiritual storm, they were struck with a heavy backlash. At this moment, they truly didn't possess any fighting strength at all. The tricolored butterfly wings vanished and the peerless beauty moved towards the very center of the tournament stage with a flash. A layer of frost formed wherever she passed. Elder Xian was no calmer than Wang Yang. Every single wrinkle on his aged face seemed to be filled with vitality as he said, just how did they do it? Was what they just used a fusion skill? Right. Wang Yang said excitedly, I was the only person who they told about that last fusion skill. If I'm not mistaken, Hui Yuhao said that fusion skill was produced when his ice jade scorpion fused with Wang Dong's radiant butterfly goddess. It is called the solitary dance amidst frost, raiment of light. I didn't think that a fusion skill would be this beautiful. This is also the only fusion skill they possess which is controlled by Wang Dong. We've won. The peerless beauty landed right in front of the Heaven Fiend Dolor. However, this great referee still had a dazed look in his eyes as he looked at this young lady, whose age seemed to be in the double digits. His voice was clearly somewhat hoarse as he said, yes, you've won. After speaking, Wang Heiyun seemed to slip slightly. He was only able to regain his footing after stabilizing himself. Spiritual Storm wasn't just a pure spiritual type attack, but an attack that could directly go through an opponent's spiritual sea to unceasingly attack their spirit by using various memories. It didn't do something as simple as destroying a target's spirit, but affected their consciousness. Although Huang Heiyun was a titled Dolor, he had endured far too many things in his life. He had watched his close relatives and friends die one by one, and he had buried that pain deep in his heart. As he didn't make any preparations to block Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong's spiritual storm, Wang Heiyun was affected much more than Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen. The tricolored light vanished and the peerless beauty once again turned into a bright, colorful halo. The halo of light quietly dissipated, revealing the two figures who were hugging each other. They were extremely pale, and they were both supporting and nestling up against each other as they quietly stood there. The tattoo of the Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion on Hui Yuhao's back slowly faded away. However, Wang Dong had already fallen into a deep sleep against his chest. Only the golden trident on his forehead flickered quietly for a bit. However, Hui Yuhao wasn't able to see all this. Although he was barely able to stand up while supporting Wang Dong, overexhausting his body had caused him to gradually lose all 6 of his senses. He only felt a patch of darkness surround him, but he didn't feel any regret. At this moment, he only felt excitement and happiness. His last memory was that of him tightly hugging Wang Dong while standing on the tournament stage of the finals of the Continental Advanced Academy Soul Dueling Tournament with his back straight. The Star Luo Emperor, Xu Jiawei, had a somewhat flushed expression as well, as he was also extremely excited. The image of that empire-overthrowing beauty had been embedded in the depths of his heart as well. The White Tiger Duke was much calmer than him. He began to mutter to himself as he looked at the pair of youths who were embracing each other, a willpower as tough as steel. They'll definitely become very useful in the future. The entire plaza had already turned into a sea of boiling emotions. Due to the heavy injuries suffered by both participating teams, the award ceremony had to be delayed. The Daotai Dolor, Elder Xian, had already appeared by the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, blocking their path forward. None of you are allowed to leave. Dispel the poison inflicted on my disciples first. Elder Xian had a very cold and solemn gaze in his eyes, and he still held Ma Xiaodao, who was flickering with the flames of the Dark Phoenix, in his embrace. The teacher in charge of the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy was still somewhat confused about the entire matter. Since everything had happened so quickly, he didn't know just how they had lost the final match that they were originally guaranteed to win. The instant he saw the peerless beauty take the stage, Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen were sent down from the stage. Why had Wang Dong and Hui Yuhao not hurt Meng Hongchen? This was because they wanted her to dispel the poison in their teammates' bodies. Did you not hear what I just said? As he speaking, Elder Xian made a grabbing motion towards Meng Hongchen. Wait a moment. The teacher in charge hurriedly blocked the path to Meng Hongchen. If possible, he truly wanted to resist Elder Xian. He truly didn't wish to allow the absolutely astonishing members of Shrek Academy to continue living. The higher the hopes one had toward a certain thing, the larger the disappointment would be if one failed to achieve it. The pain he currently felt was similar to that of falling down from a tall mountain. He had to stay strong as the teacher in charge of his team, but he couldn't. He truly didn't dare to obstruct Elder Xian at this moment. Xiao Hongchen was now unconscious, while Meng Hongchen had suffered heavy injuries. If he couldn't bring them back, he wouldn't face a consequence as simple as losing his own life. Even his family would be implicated in this matter. Elder Xian, this is only a competition. I'll dispel the poison in your students' bodies. The teacher in charge forcefully suppressed the grief he felt in his heart and enunciated each word carefully. Elder Xian nodded and said coldly, "That'd be for the best. Also, give me that sword that Ma Rulong used earlier." The teacher's expression immediately changed. "That won't be possible. That's a Class 8 soul tool that our Sun Moon Empire's illustrious Virtue Hall forged. Its value is inestimable. Let me ask you this. Are you going to give it, or not?" Elder Xian's voice was as cold and tough as ever, and he didn't release any pressure either. However, his mere question caused the teacher to start sweating to the point where his shirt was drenched. Elder Xian didn't look at him, but the unconscious Xiao Hongchen. The teacher's voice trembled somewhat as he said, "Elder Xian, you are but a transcendent allure. Don't tell me that you are going to bully the weak and make things difficult for us of the younger generation." However, Hu Yuhao didn't know about any of this. By the time he woke up from his coma, it was already the afternoon of the day after. How uncomfortable. Coughing, Hu Yuhao gradually woke up from his deep sleep, his eyes still somewhat dazed. He only felt his entire body go soft, as though all of his energy had been sucked away. Not only that, but all of his muscles were in an extremely sore state. Even after sleeping for so long, he didn't seem to have any signs of recovering his soul power. This feeling of having everything sucked out from my body is really uncomfortable. Hu Yuhao wasn't feeling anxious at all. As his consciousness gradually recovered, he discovered that although he had severely overexhausted his body, he felt extraordinarily clear-headed after waking up. The memories of everything that had just occurred were clearly returning to him after he woke up, and he quickly remembered him and Wang Dong defeating their opponents in the finals. "We should have won. We're the final champions. We've protected Shrek Academy's glory." His excitement caused his eyes to gradually light up. The current Hu Yuhao had just noticed that something had changed in his spiritual sea. As he gazed deep into himself, he was immediately overjoyed. His spiritual sea had increased in size by 25% at the very least. Not only that, but his spiritual power had become more condensed, and even the golden lights in his spiritual sea had brightened somewhat. At this exact moment, a figure suddenly appeared in Hu Yuhao's mind. It had a head of pinkish-blue long hair, a set of golden eyes, and peerless looks, as well as a faintly discernible golden trident. Was she really the descent of the radiant goddess?